Welcome back to Alberta Prime Time and our Wednesday night panel on crime.
This crash, Emily Holmes was not driving quickly, yet she didn't have the reaction time to stop.
That was Steve Finkelman, the father of 27-year-old David Finkelman, who was struck and killed while crossing Edmonton's White Avenue earlier this year. The 19-year-old driver behind the wheel of the car was handed a $2,000 fine and a 2-month license suspension. Fred, the driver was charged with failing to yield to a pedestrian in a crosswalk and careless driving. What would have gone into consideration for that sentence?
Well, it starts with the prosecution and follows through right through to sentencing here. There'll be a number of different things they're looking at. You know, they have options either to go under the Traffic Safety Act, which is kind of quasi-criminal law at a provincial level, or they can go criminally with offenses under the criminal code. And I think what the investigators and the prosecution would be looking at is obviously any motive on the driver's behalf to kill somebody. So was this a premeditated thing, or degree of recklessness, just something that's just so egregious that in terms of speed or driving pattern that's just reprehensible, things that would cause you to go criminally rather than under the Traffic Safety Act. In these circumstances, unfortunately, as tragic as it is, it looks like there was no intent. She didn't intend to kill anybody. Speed was not really an issue. It's just a terrible tragedy that occurred. Just literally careless driving.
So, Jason, in situations where death is involved, judgments may seem inappropriate to some. Do you feel consideration for criminal charges are warranted?
It's hard to say. We don't know a ton about the specific facts of this case, but I think for the reasons that Fred mentioned, in the absence of those kinds of factors, we really are left with a Traffic Safety Act violation. And I think we want to be very careful about living in a society when what is just a mistake would be turned into criminal behavior. Now, I've said on this show before, and I'll say it again, I do think society in general treats driving offenses rather cavalierly, distracted driving and speeding. But I think where the attitudes have to change aren't necessarily, and changing those attitudes isn't necessarily accomplished by tougher penalties for the reasons I just mentioned. You look at impaired driving and how serious a scourge that's considered by society, how much it's frowned upon. And that's come through a long, slow process of social conditioning and it becoming socially acceptable through public awareness campaigns and things like that. I don't think we're quite there yet with distracted driving and with speeding. People still tend to get frustrated and angry when they get a speeding ticket. And really, I think that's where the attitudes have to change. Having said all that, I think in more extreme cases where someone was extremely reckless while distracted driving or speeding, laying criminal charges and getting a severe penalty may help to shift those societal attitudes. But I think in the day in, day out cases, we still really have to work on drivers' attitudes.
Irfan, Jason brings up some excellent points there. You can't go a day without seeing someone talking on a phone, texting, their head down, looking at Twitter, who knows what. What do you feel needs to happen to ensure that drivers are paying due attention to the task at hand?
Absolutely, right. I think I really echo a lot of Jason's sentiments there, because at the end of the day, regardless of how much you try to lay charges, put fines, punish this actions even more, at the end of the day, similar to like drunk driving or not speeding and different responsibilized actions as well, same thing with something like distracted driving. It is related to texting while driving or while you're on your phone or your iPod, or the list goes on and on. It's up to the individual at the end of the day, right? So how do we create those mechanisms for awareness for us as individuals in this society to realize this is not cool to be doing? There is a more important task at hand, and that's driving safely on the road. And just echoing a lot of what Jason said, right? This will be something that will still take some time. Like, historically with the drunk driving measures and how people are still slowly getting away from driving while drunk. It still does happen. Police stats always show when they have a check stop, they still are arresting a lot of people, especially over long weekends. And this is just another chapter in that book where more long-term progress will hopefully alleviate this behavior.
Okay, let's squeeze in one more quick topic here. Statistical analysis is being used to help prevent crime on Edmonton's transit system, a daily crime forecast prepared based on previous incidents ranging from fare evasion to assaults. Transit security officers are then dispatched based on those trends, rather. Jason, I guess crime fighting isn't always reactionary, is it?
And it can't be. Really, statistics in the absence of any kind of analysis can be meaningless and have very little use. I would actually be surprised and rather critical if they weren't analyzing these statistics and basing their deployment on what they're seeing. This is something police and law enforcement agencies have been doing for years. In the transit sphere, maybe it's taken them a little longer to get that level of sophistication, but they've been doing it with the Calgary transit system for years as well, and I'm glad to see that Edmonton's doing it. I'd be shocked if they weren't.
Irfan, you actually have some experience in this. How important a tool would analytics be to the role of policing?
Yeah, so I mean, something like policing is no different than any other industry now too, and using stats to support your business operations is integral, right? So, response times, or where your hotspots are, or, what times of the day, what days of the week you're most likely to see different types of property crime in certain areas, is giving more tools for police to do their jobs more effectively. So it's a lot more proactive. You're not just, driving around a neighborhood and hoping to find something. You're essentially using that data to back up and support different opportunities for crime. At the same time, however, though, there is studies that show, when you focus in certain areas, it is going to displace it into the surrounding areas. But I think with the transit officers specifically, if they're focused on those routes, they can have the manpower to even go outside of that to control any kind of displacement that might happen as well.
Fred, we're out of time, but reliable?
The new technology, yes. I think, looking at what Jason commented about, for decades they've been using pin maps and things like that. In our new world of technology, far more powerful algorithms at their disposal in terms of artificial intelligence and a predictive analysis of where crime is going to occur. And so I think that's where really some of the exciting opportunities lie for the future.
Some interesting stuff. Gentlemen, thank you kindly. Good to see you all. Fred Rayner, president of Rayner Consulting, former chief of the Edmonton Police Service, Irfan Chaudhry, criminology professor at MacEwan University, and Jason Van Russell, justice and social issues reporter for the Calgary Herald.